Hey everybody, coming to you today from the youth room. Been a while since we've been in this room, isn't it? I'm looking forward to the day when we can hang out in here once again. But today we're in John chapter 12. John chapter 12 is an awesome chapter. It's a chapter where Jesus is nearing the end of his earthly ministry. And then the rest of John, we'll be talking about the days leading up to, or the hours actually leading up to the crucifixion of Christ. But if I was to try to summarize John chapter 12, I think I would say it's a chapter about commitment. It's a chapter about commitment. So I want to ask you right off, how committed are you to Jesus? How committed are you to Jesus? If Jesus today came and asked you to choose him over your friends, would you? If Jesus today came and asked you to choose him over, I don't know, pick something, your favorite video game. If Jesus asked you to pick him over TikTok, if Jesus asked you to pick him over money or a car or a girl or a boy, like if Jesus asked you to pick him over your greatest dream, how committed are you to Christ? What are you willing to surrender in order to follow him more fully? Because I think that's the big question that's being asked in John chapter 12. Because the John chapter 12 starts off with this story about Jesus being with Lazarus and his family. Remember, Jesus just raised Lazarus from the dead, right? So they've got lots to be celebrating and lots to be praising God for. But there's this cool part in the story where Mary goes and gets one of her most expensive bottles of perfume and pours the perfume on Jesus' feet and then wipes his feet with it. Like, you could clean his feet with a bucket of water, right? Like, why are you cleaning it with this most expensive perfume? And that's what Judas Iscariot said. That if you were just going to waste it, you could have given it to the poor, sold it and given them the money. Why are you putting it on Jesus' feet? She was putting it on Jesus' feet to show how committed she is to him, how much she loved him, how much she appreciated all that he has done in his life. And she chose Jesus over a bottle of perfume. And Jesus, of course, says, you'll have the poor with you always, but you won't always have me, which I interpret as, Judas, you're going to sell me out for 30 pieces of silver. You're not committed. Mary's committed. Don't question her on her commitment when you aren't even committed. So I think it's all about commitment, because then Jesus goes on and he talks about how he came to die so that we could be beneficiaries of his life, right? He says, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. And he goes on and says, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He knew in order to be to experience the best relationships with people and for us to have a walk with him, he was going to have to die. And he goes on in this chapter to say, man, I could have asked God the Father to save me from this, but this is the exact hour that I've come for. Jesus is saying, I am all in for you. I am fully committed to you to the point of dying so that we can have life. That's how committed he is to us. And he could have asked the Father to save him, but he didn't. God said, you can have your life, or you can save these people. And God chose us. God's fully committed. He is all in for you. He didn't even choose life over you. He didn't choose a painless life over you. He chose the most painful kind of ending to life that anyone could imagine for you. He's fully committed. Mary was fully committed. How committed are we to Christ? At the end of the chapter, or towards the end of the chapter, in verses 42 and 43, it says, nevertheless, many of the rulers believed in him, but because of the Pharisees, they were not confessing him for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the approval of men rather than the approval of God. So he's talking about people that were probably holding positions of authority within the temple, and they were afraid that if they confessed Christ, if they showed their true commitment, that they would lose their positions. They valued their positions over God, is what they were saying. They had messed up priorities. And so what what Jesus is getting at here, and what he's asking us, this is a good question for all of us to consider, is do we want the approval of man, or do we want the approval of God? Again, how committed are you? They believed, but they didn't confess. What's Paul tell us in Romans? In order for us to be saved, we have to do two things, right? Believe in our heart and confess with our mouth. Confession isn't just saying it out loud in an empty room. Confession, it's more about a life that's being lived. Our life should confess Christ. The way we live should confess Christ. The way we talk should confess Christ. That shows our commitment. Our confession shows our commitment. We can believe all day long, but if we fail to confess, maybe that's a sign of a lack of commitment. So all throughout John chapter 12, I'm just constantly asking myself, am I this committed? Would I be willing to give up my most precious thing, an expensive bottle of perfume, to bless my Savior? To bless the man that gave me life, that died for me? Am I committed to him that I would sacrifice something I found great value in so that he could be glorified? Am I committed enough that I'm willing to give my life for the one who gave his life for me? These guys that Jesus is talking about that believed in him but weren't confessing him, they weren't getting life from the Pharisees. They were getting pats on the back. They were getting a job or a position. They weren't getting life. Jesus had something so much better to offer them. But they didn't see it, and so they weren't committed. I want to encourage you today to be fully committed. Jesus is all in for you. All in. Let's be all in for him. Let's be all in for him. Let's seek his approval rather than the approval of man, rather than the approval of friends or family. Let's choose him over everything else. And I guarantee you, when we choose him over everything else, that's when we get to live the abundant life that he has promised us, that he said he came to die to give us. Let's believe today, but let's confess. And let's make our commitment known to the world that we're all in for Christ. Guys, I'm praying for all of you regularly. And I'll see you tomorrow for John chapter 13.